In 1661, Nicolas Fouquet, finance minister to Louis XIV of France, did something that should have been a victory lap. He hosted the most extravagant party Europe had ever seen at his estate, Vaux-le-Vicomte. We're talking 600 acres, fireworks choreographed to music by Lully, food prepared by François Vadel, and architecture that would later inspire Versailles itself. Fouquet wasn't a fool. He was brilliant, connected, and unimaginably wealthy. And 3 weeks later, he was arrested, stripped of everything, and spent the rest of his life in prison. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic more than a century later, Robert Morris, the man who personally financed the American Revolution, made a different mistake. By 1798, Morris had a net worth that would translate to hundreds of millions today. He owned land everywhere. He understood money, or so it seemed. Then leverage turned. Credit tightened. Land values froze. Morris died penniless in 1806, disgraced and forgotten. These weren't stupid people. They weren't reckless gamblers. They simply never understood that wealth changes its rules at different levels, and that crossing each line without adapting is often more dangerous than never crossing it at all. Here's the thing. There are exactly 3 wealth thresholds where the mathematics, psychology, and power dynamics of money fundamentally shift. Crossing each one changes the rules of the game entirely. Below them, you're playing defense. Above them, you're playing a completely different sport. And almost nobody ever explains this clearly, which is why most people stay stuck forever, working harder inside a system that was never designed to let them cross. Hey, I'm Brian, and I spend way too much time thinking about wealth psychology, financial power, and the quiet rules that actually govern money. If that sounds useful, subscribe, like the video, it genuinely helps, and stick with me, because this isn't motivational fluff. This is mechanics. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 3 specific net worth levels where banks, employers, and institutions start treating you differently, why the financial industry has zero incentive to explain them, and how understanding these numbers changes not just how your money grows, but how you behave, how you negotiate, and how much fear you carry in your daily decisions. Not because you become greedy, not because you become lucky, because the mathematics are unambiguous, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Let's start where all of this was first figured out. Let's go back to Florence in the early 1400s. Around 1420, Florence had a population of roughly 60,000 people, about the size of modern-day Flagstaff, Arizona. It wasn't Rome. It wasn't Paris. It wasn't a political capital or a military superpower. And yet, for nearly 3 centuries, an absurd amount of Europe's money flowed through this one city. Why? Because Florence figured something out about wealth before anyone else did. At the center of this was Cosimo de' Medici. And I want you to forget the paintings, the palaces, the marble statues for a moment. Cosimo didn't start like that. He was born in 1389 into a family that was solidly middle class by Florentine standards. His father ran a modest banking operation. No titles, no armies, no divine right. Nothing that would make you think, this family will dominate European finance for generations. Nothing special. Nothing obvious. But Cosimo noticed something that changed everything. And I want you to pay close attention here, because this insight is worth more than any stock tip or investment hack you'll ever hear. Cosimo realized that money behaves differently at different sizes. Below a certain level, money is fragile. Every shock threatens survival. Above that level, money starts to multiply, but only if you stop treating it like survival capital. And then, above another line entirely, money stops being about growth at all and becomes about time, leverage, and permanence. In Cosimo's era, this showed up very clearly. Small merchants borrowed to survive bad seasons. Medium merchants reinvested profits to expand trade routes. But the families who endured, the ones whose names you still recognize, did something different once they crossed each threshold. They changed behavior. They changed risk. They changed patience. By 1434, the Medici weren't just rich. They were untouchable, not because they had the most money, but because they understood which game they were playing at each level. They crossed what we might call the breathing line, where survival anxiety fades. The multiplication line, where capital starts doing the work, and the immortality line, where wealth outlives the person. Their competitors often had similar starting capital. Many even had higher income. But they played the wrong game at the wrong level, and they disappeared within a generation. So what does this have to do with you? Everything. These same three thresholds exist today. The numbers are different. The institutions have different names. But the mathematics and psychology are identical. And nobody talks about them. Not banks. Not advisors. Not financial media. Because once you understand them, you stop being easy to control. Let me start with the first one, the hardest one, and the place where almost everyone gets stuck. First milestone, $100,000. The breathing line. Let me be extremely specific here, because vague advice is worthless. The first real wealth milestone is $100,000 in investable assets. Not $100,000 in total net worth. Not $100,000 including your car, your furniture, or the zestimate on your house. I'm talking about investable assets, cash, stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, money that can actually compound. Here's what most people don't realize about this number. Below $100,000, compound interest is technically real, but psychologically invisible. And I know that sounds harsh. You've probably heard that compounding works at any level. Mathematically, that's true. Psychologically, it's almost a lie, because you can't feel it working. Let me show you why. I want you to actually sit with these numbers. Say you have $10,000 invested, earning a respectable 8% annually. That's $800 per year, about $67 per month. That doesn't even cover your phone bill. So what do? You ignore it. You stop checking. It doesn't change how you behave. At $50,000, that same 8% is $4,000 per year, about $333 per month. Better, but still not life-changing. It's groceries. It's utilities. It's nice, but it doesn't alter your decisions. Now hit $100,000. At 8%, that's $8,000 per year. $666 every single month, whether you lift a finger or not. Think about what that means practically. That's more than 11% of the median U.S. salary, showing up without effort. That's a car payment. That's insurance. That's margin. And here's the critical part. Getting from $100,000 to $200,000 takes roughly half the time it took you to reach the first $100,000, assuming similar contributions and returns. The mathematics are unambiguous. Growth starts accelerating, but only after you survive the slowest phase. And this is exactly where 90% of people quit. The journey to $100,000 is brutal. It's slow. It's boring. It feels pointless. For most people, it takes 7 to 10 years of consistent saving and investing. During that time, nothing seems to be happening. No fireworks. No validation. Just discipline. So people stop. They say it's not worth it. They chase shortcuts. They cash out early. They never cross the line. But here's the thing. The psychological shift at $100,000 is actually more important than the mathematical one. Once your money starts covering real expenses, you stop feeling desperate. You negotiate differently. You take smarter risks. You're not as scared anymore. Let me give you a concrete analogy to make this visceral. Imagine trying to push a massive boulder across a flat field. At first, it barely moves. You're exhausted. You're sweating. Every push feels pointless. That's $0 to $100,000. That's the puddle phase. All effort. No visible momentum. But once the boulder starts rolling, it doesn't need nearly as much force to keep going. That's what crossing $100,000 feels like. The work doesn't disappear, but the resistance does. The people who build wealth aren't the smartest. They're the ones who survive the puddle phase. And once you cross that line, the game finally starts to change. If you're new here and just subscribed, comment your name below. I read every comment and shout out new subscribers in my next video. I do appreciate you joining me on this finance journey. The multiplication line. Now, let's talk about the second milestone. This is where things start to get genuinely counterintuitive. The number is $500,000 in investable assets. At 8% annual returns, that's $40,000 per year, every year, without lifting a finger. Think about that. $3,333 per month. guaranteed by math alone, not by your job. And here's what most people completely miss. It's not about the money you can withdraw. It's about the fear that disappears. When you hit this milestone, you achieve what I call walkaway power. You are functionally immune to catastrophic financial events. Layoffs, market drops, even a sudden career change, they no longer terrify you. Your capital is now your most productive employee. It doesn't complain. It doesn't get sick. It keeps compounding while you sleep. Here's the transformation. Your money starts producing more than your labor. If you're earning $80,000 a year at work, your capital now contributes half that without you touching it. Suddenly, you stop negotiating from desperation. You make smarter career choices. You take higher quality risks. You say no to things that don't serve you because you can. And the compounding advantage here becomes almost unfair. The $40,000 a year grows exponentially. Every year, your passive income can exceed your annual contributions. Your financial independence is accelerating while you're still actively building it. I know $500,000 seems impossibly far away if you're coming from zero or even $50,000. I remember when I first understood the psychological impact. It felt distant, almost unreachable. But here's the reality. Time is passing anyway. 7, 10, 15 years will go by regardless. You can either be in the puddle phase, watching your future wealth slip by, or be strategically compounding toward multiplication. And let me give you a cautionary tale. During the 2008 financial crisis, many people had accumulated substantial wealth, well above $500,000. But without understanding walkaway power, panic selling destroyed their progress. They had the money, but not the mindset. That psychological shift at $500,000 isn't just about money. It's about identity, behavior, and freedom. The inversion point. This brings us to the third and final milestone. This is the one that separates the wealthy from everyone else. The number is $2.5 million in investable assets. Something genuinely strange happens at this level. At a conservative 6% return, your portfolio generates $150,000 per year. That's more than most people make through full-time work every single year, without effort. And this is where the concept I call the inversion point comes into play. Your capital becomes more productive than your labor. Your money now works harder than you do, every single day, all day. Here's the uncomfortable math. Before this threshold, your work fuels growth. After this threshold, your capital fuels your work. $150,000 a year breaks down to roughly $400 per day, every day, continuously, without asking for a promotion, without negotiating hours, without stress. But here's the hard truth. Reaching $2.5 million almost never comes from salary alone. This isn't just about saving diligently. This is about ownership, equity in businesses, real estate, startups. You need assets that scale beyond the limits of your personal time. This is why truly wealthy people behave differently. They've done the math. They understand opportunity cost. They understand leverage. At this point, working purely for money is economically inefficient. Decisions aren't driven by fear. They're driven by strategy, timing, and influence. The rules have flipped. And if you don't adapt your behavior here, you can plateau or even regress. This is why each wealth milestone requires a different mindset, different actions, and different psychology. Crossing $100,000 gives you breathing space. $500,000 gives you freedom. $2.5 million gives you time itself and the power to make it work for you. And this is where the antagonists of this story come into sharp focus. Think about who profits when you don't understand these thresholds. Who benefits when you stay in the puddle phase at $100,000, the multiplication limbo at $500,000, or never reach inversion at $2.5 million? Banks. They thrive when you borrow to survive. Every credit card balance, every personal loan, every mortgage with hidden fees, they profit from your lack of clarity. The less you know, the more you pay. Credit card companies. Compound interest isn't magic when it's working against you. That 18% APR? It's quietly eroding your financial mobility while making them richer. Financial advisors. Many of them earn their living from fees on funds that don't outperform the market. If you stay below the milestones, you pay them to manage your money instead of letting your money work for you. Employers, desperation is profitable. If you're fearful of losing your job, you'll accept lower pay, longer hours, and poor terms. They benefit from your urgency, and the strategies they use are consistent. Keep you focused on income instead of net worth, because you can earn more but never really escape the system. Push products and lifestyles that consume your excess cash, preventing you from hitting the first threshold. Make that first milestone feel impossibly far away, because once you pass it, your leverage starts threatening their bottom line. Here's the thing. They profit when you don't understand the rules at each level. Once you see it, you're no longer an easy source of passive profit for them. So what does this actually mean for you? Let me give you specific, concrete action steps, not vague advice. This is about clarity and execution. Step 1, assessment. You need to figure out exactly where you are. Not roughly, not in the ballpark. Write down your investable assets, cash, stocks, retirement accounts, bonds. Be honest. Include only what can actually compound. This is your starting line. Below $100,000? Your mission is singular and urgent. Get to $100,000 as fast as humanly possible. Nothing else matters. Forget optimization hacks. Forget side hustle trends. Focus on maxing out retirement accounts, cutting unnecessary expenses aggressively, saving at least 20 to 30% of income, starting a disciplined investment plan. Between $100,000 and $500,000, you've proven you can build wealth. Your focus shifts to maintaining consistency, diversifying investments, using leverage intelligently, low-interest debt for assets. Asking, do I have walkaway power? Between $500,000 and $2.5 million, your focus shifts again. Now it's ownership and scaling. Salary alone rarely gets you here. Focus on equity in businesses, real estate that produces passive cash flow, startup investments, partnerships that scale, anything that grows independently of your time. Above $2.5 million? Congratulations. But now new dangers arise. Market shocks can still hurt you if concentrated. Lifestyle inflation can erode leverage. Focus shifts from growth to protection, optimization, and strategic deployment of capital. Here's the key takeaway. Each threshold demands a different mindset, a different action plan, and different priorities. If you ignore this, you plateau. If you embrace it, your wealth starts compounding beyond effort, freeing you from fear and giving you time itself. Here's the final thing I want to leave you with. Remember Nicolas Fouquet? The man who threw the most extravagant party in Europe only to be imprisoned weeks later? He crossed thresholds of wealth without understanding the rules that change at each level. His money should have freed him. Instead, it exposed him. And Robert Morris, who financed the American Revolution. He amassed vast land and capital, but when leverage shifted, he didn't have the framework to survive. He had wealth, yes, but not the mindset or the phase-specific strategies. He died penniless. The lesson isn't to avoid wealth. The lesson is to understand that money changes its physics at each milestone. The $100,000 breathing line isn't just about cash. It's about survival and psychological freedom. The $500,000 multiplication line isn't just income. It's walkaway power and the ability to leverage capital. And the $2.5 million inversion point isn't just luxury. It's time itself, productivity flipped, and capital that outperforms your labor. These three numbers aren't just numbers to achieve and check off a list. They are phase transitions, points where your relationship with risk, opportunity, and power fundamentally shifts. The strategies that got you to $100,000 won't get you to $500,000. The strategies that work to reach $500,000 won't get you to $2.5 million. Think back to Cosimo de' Medici in Florence 600 years ago. He figured this out long before modern finance. They didn't have the internet, ETFs, or Wall Street advisors. They had insight, patience, and a framework. And that framework allowed them to transcend ordinary wealth, building influence and legacy that outlived them by centuries. You now have information that most people will live their entire lives without. You know the thresholds. You know the numbers. You know why banks, advisors, and media won't tell you. But now you know. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Which threshold are you going to focus on next? If this helped you, subscribe and leave a comment with which milestone you're working toward. I read every single comment, and I want to see you cross your next threshold. Because here's the thing, you can survive the puddle phase. You can leverage multiplication. You can reach inversion. And now, you know the rules of the game.